Welcome in to another edition of Region Roundup. I'm James Boyd here with Mike Clark. Mike, how are you doing? I'm hoping you're warm.
Oh, man. I'm seeing what's going on down in Texas. Millions of people without power. I lived in Texas for a short time back in the 80s, and I can tell you that they are definitely not used to this kind of weather, even the power outage being aside. It's like, so we got through the pandemic for 11 months, and then all of a sudden here comes winter.
Yeah.
With all of its glory and cold and very cold, not just cold, but really cold, and snow, not just snow, but lots of snow, including a lot of snow outside the Boyd house in Romeoville, and the evidence of that is in the viral video that we saw posted on Twitter the other night of you taking a running leap off the front porch. And I don't know how many points I'd get for that. We need to talk to some diving judges. Not maybe the greatest form in that, but definitely style points, I would say. And you had mentioned that that was not unanimously well received in the Boyd household.
No, so what happened was I shoveled, I believe this was Monday. So I shoveled Monday when it was snowing like crazy. This was maybe like 11 a.m. And then my dad came home. He gets off and then, around 4:30, and he comes home and it's coming down again really bad. So we waited for my sister to get in from her job, and then we cleared the driveway for a second time, my second time going out there in 24 hours. Not even 24 hours, it was more like 5 hours. And so we cleared all of that, and it was still snowing. And, we were looking outside, and my sister was like, I want to go play in the snow. And I was like, I'll go jump in it right now. And, I don't think anybody believed that I would do it except for my sister, maybe. So I told her, just hold the phone, and I'm going. And my parents were, telling me for, probably about a minute, like, don't do this. It's cold. What are you doing? And being a bunch of Grinches. And I had to remember, I was like, wait a minute, like, I'm the one who shoveled this. And two, I'm grown. So what are you going to do? Like, ground me or put me on punishment, or I don't know, those things don't exist anymore. So, I kind of took the I'm grown approach and opened the door, ran out in my no shoes, socks, sweatpants, and a hoodie, and jumped in. I give myself like a 3 on the dive. I didn't know how hard it would be, so I kind of took it lightly, and it was fun. And I came back inside right away and stripped down to, like, I had some shorts on underneath my pants and a t-shirt. And my mom just shook her head at me, and she continued to shake her head at me for about an hour afterwards. Every time I looked at her, she would just put her head down in disappointment. And my dad was just like, See, you should have raised your son better. You didn't raise your son. You didn't raise your son right. So the running joke in my house is that whenever me and my sister, we do anything that doesn't please our parents, even though, like, just lighthearted stuff, they'll, like, banter with each other, like, well, you should have raised your son better. Like, it's not both their sons or both of their daughters. So it was fun, man. It brought some laughs out, I'm sure, around my house, even though they were fussing at me. And then my sister, with her camera work, wasn't the greatest because she was actually looking at me and laughing and probably couldn't believe that it was happening. So she apologized for her for missing, like, not missing it, but like having a bad angle, which no one really cares about. But it was fun, something to do. And honestly, I was like so sick of the snow. And as my grandma says, all weather is good weather, because God made it. So I was trying to embrace some of that positivity that my grandma has. Although she doesn't shovel snow, obviously, so.
Easy for her to say.
I know.
Right?
I welcome her perspective after being out there. No disrespect to the Grams, I love her, but it was just fun. I told her about it. She was laughing. I got to send I sent my aunt the video. She'll show it to her, and she'll probably fuss at me as well. But when you shovel the snow, you can do what you want with it. So that's what I did.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's. And it kind of reminds me too, just speaking of viral stuff, that we saw this week is the the court hearing down in Texas where one of the lawyers showed up as a cat with the cat
Yes.
filter. I'm sure most of us saw that. So, we really need to have a little bit of fun sometimes, and it's been a grim 11 months, for so many different reasons. Obviously, COVID, now the weather. And it feels like, it's been a tough 11 months, so we need to laugh sometimes. And however we get it, whether it's you jumping in the snow or the lawyer dude down in Texas forgetting to take the cat filter off his laptop for the Zoom hearing.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mike, I had a Zoom thing I did with one of my friends the other night, and I let my mom use my laptop not too long ago, and when I logged in, I was her, and then had this Delta Sigma Theta, which is a sorority background, and I had to log back out and redo it because I had this red background and all this other glittery stuff, and I was like, oh wow, I forgot that I was Lorna Boyd for a day. So yeah, I can relate. I wasn't a cat though, but so I can't relate to that, but that was definitely a pretty funny moment. It kind of sums up how we've all had to just adapt to technology, and sometimes it doesn't, go our way all the time.
Yeah, and speaking more of snow, you were going to a game tonight. We're recording this on Wednesday, and you're not going to this game. Would have been a great game, Andrean and Westside, but apparently there are boiler issues at Andrean, so that game was postponed until next week. So at least it was not a COVID postponement. So
I reached out right away, and when the AD told me it was postponed and that they had already planned on playing the game next week, and no other games were postponed, I just got curious, what is it if it's not COVID? And fittingly enough, it was a boiler issue that I'm sure they'll get fixed ASAP. But like you said, I'm gonna miss out on that game, but I'll head to Couts in Lake Station instead. I'm just excited to get to a game at this point. I mean, all of Tuesday's games were postponed or canceled, so I'm itching to get back, in my hot seat and have that deadline pressure later tonight. So I kind of welcome it. So it should be fun. I'm grateful for it every time, even though it's not as fun going through it. Once you hit send, Mike, I'm sure and you make that deadline, it's like a rush. Yes, I made it again.
Well, I'm going to have to find out. Luckily, my game, here's a spoiler alert. We're going to be talking about me finally going to a game for the first time in 11 months at the end of the podcast, but we'll save that for later. Anyway, staying with basketball, though, we have Crown Point still alive, avenging last year's loss to Penn in the playoffs and moving on.
Yeah, Mike, it was an incredible day. It was Penn versus Maryville in the first semifinal. Penn rolled past Maryville, and it was LaPorte and Crown Point rolled past LaPorte. So setting up the rematch, it was I believe their fifth time facing each other in the last 3 years. Every game has been pretty tight. Crown Point had defeated Penn during the regular season by 1 point, and then this time around they beat them pretty handedly. But I mean, the start of the game was insane, Mike. It started off 13-0 Penn, and I'm thinking whoa, I don't think anybody expected it to be like that, because all you hear about from fans and the two fan bases and everything you see on Twitter is it's going to be a really great game, because Crown Point, I believe, is number 2 in the state. Penn was number 3, and then come out and Penn's just beating up Crown Point. I'm like, whoa, this is not what I expected. And then Crown Point roared back with the 14-0 run to take the lead. And it was pretty even for the rest of the game until Crown Point pulled away at the end to earn the victory. Their 9th regional championship, second in 3 years. Fittingly enough, their first one won in the last couple of years was against Penn as well. Beat them in overtime. So it was a great game, man. Mike, that was the best game I've seen, boys or girls, all year. I've seen some good ones this year, but just the stakes of it obviously adds to it. And the shot making of Jessica Carruthers was off the charts. I have seen her play in a lot of big games the last 3 years. I actually started my career her freshman year, so I've seen all of her career at Crown Point. And she was unstoppable in certain stretches. She had a fadeaway on the baseline, Mike, that looked like it was like a Kobe Bryant type of thing. And really, I'm thinking like, wow, it's a horrible shot, and it went in. I'm like, wow, it's a great shot. So and then she did it again, later on in the game and proved that it wasn't a fluke. So she got in a stretch there in the first half where she scored about 7 straight points to get them back in the game, and then in the third quarter she scored about 7 or 8 and 9 straight points. And she hit one pull-up jumper over 2 people, and I was thinking, okay, well, she's just on fire right now. And then Lily Stoddard, the 6'4" Purdue commit, also a junior. Mike, it was the best game I've seen her play. And again, I've seen her play in a lot of big games. Best game I've ever seen her play. She was just straight up dominant. I think I had her for 13 points, 14 rebounds, 6 blocks, probably altered about, 10 more shots. Everything that she did just made it so much harder for Penn to score after that first, wave of offense. After that, man, it got pretty tight. And then in the fourth quarter, they opened up the fourth quarter, like a 15-0 run, and kind of put the game away from that point. But it was a great game. I know Penn had a great player, Trinity Clinton, who's their all-time leading scorer. She became their all-time leading scorer in that game. She kind of kept them in it. But at the end of the day, when you got, in my opinion, the 2 best players on the floor, and they both played their best in that game, it's hard to beat them, man. And it was a great game. They had 25% capacity at LaPorte, so the fans were there. They were loud, and it felt like a not semi-state, but it felt like a regional championship game. And I'm hoping for a similar environment, this Saturday up at LaPorte when Crown Point takes on Fort Wayne Carroll, who's 25-2. I believe Crown Point is 23-1. So it's gonna be a great game. It should be fun. I'll have more on that later this week, as far as just previews and, kind of do some scouting on Fort Wayne Carroll, other stories I have up my sleeve. But, Mike, it was fun, man. I enjoyed it, and it really felt like a playoff game in Indiana. And I'm hoping and really just thankful that it's happening. And hopefully, the teams can stay safe, fans can stay safe, and we can do it again in a couple of days. And
let's just give a thanks to the IHSAA for scheduling the regional and the semi-state both in LaPorte, yes. Because there have been years where those trips have been a lot longer, particularly the semi-state. I mean, the semi-state could be obviously anywhere in the northern half of the state. So to have it as close as LaPorte, we very much appreciate that. So yes. Let me, especially with the weather the way it's been.
Oh, man, it took me forever to get to LaPorte last week, and it took me forever to get back home, but wouldn't trade it for anything because that's the job sometimes, and you just got to deal with it. No snow in the forecast Saturday, Mike, so hopefully it'll be good.
Yeah, and a little bit more basketball on the boys' side. Christopher Mattis from Lowell reached a milestone, and it was a particularly meaningful one for him, too.
Yeah, it was a really unique story. Obviously we've had a lot of great players do a lot of great things this year. Usually if they go over 1,000 points or becoming all-time leading scorer at their school, I'll include it in a notebook if I'm not at the game, like live. But this time I did a separate story simply because Christopher Mantis actually passed his uncle, basically, his stepdad's best friend, who, Chris has known basically all his life. He passed Chris Juicevich, who was a 1989 Lowell graduate. He held the previous record. I think it was like something like 1,700 points, 1,716 off the top of my head, I think. And Mantis is now at 1,775 and counting. And it's basically like a family type of thing, really family-oriented story. I actually talked to, Joe Delgado, the Lowell head coach, for the story. Ended up not using any quotes from him because I was like, you know what? I talked to his stepdad, who's also an assistant coach on the team. Talked to the former record holder, and now talked to Mantis, and it was really like a cool family type of story. And decided to leave the coach out, which I'm sure he didn't mind. Write about Mantis so much. I'm sure we'll talk to him soon about it, but it was a really fun story just because of the banter that kind of goes back and forth between those two. From what I understand, Chris Juicevich is a trash talker. And he didn't mind trash talking Chris even when he was little Chris. Now he's 6'7" Chris and the Appalachian State commit, and an Indiana All-Star candidate. So it was a really cool story. If Chris keeps up this pace, he might have an outside chance of actually cracking, 1,900 or possibly 2,000 points. I'm not sure if he'll get there, just because they did miss some games this year due to COVID and things like that. But all that being said, I mean, he's averaging, I think, like 27 points a game, 50% shooting, 38 from three, and 80% from the line. He's kind of like in my opinion, he's like the Kevin Durant of the region in a sense, because he's 6'7", so when he shoots, it's either he makes it or he misses it. Like, it's not because he's deterred too much by the defense, because he just rises up and shoots over you. You know what I mean? Like, so, and he's very efficient at shooting the ball. And I will say, check out that story. It's really, really fun, quick read, and one that I was pretty proud of, and their family enjoyed it. And they're an awesome family. I think Chris is a very good representative of Lowell. Very humble kid, and one of the best basketball players that's kind of come through the area in recent years.
Yeah, for sure. And we will now switch gears a little bit and move on to football recruiting. Football recruiting has been kind of strange this year. We've talked about it at different times during the pod. We had long dead periods, but now coaches are able to talk to recruits and stuff, and we're actually in the 22 cycle, but even 23s are getting some attention, and one of those is Andrean's Drayk Bowen, who is could be, it looks like he's going to be the next big timer from the region. JoJo Johnson, we've talked about a lot. Obviously, he is the current big timer heading to play to Notre Dame, and Drayk Bowen coincidentally has an offer from Notre Dame as well. And when Notre Dame offers you as a sophomore, you're probably pretty good.
Yeah, just to kind of add some context, I'll have more on this in a recruiting notebook, shortly after this pod gets posted. And Bowen he's and actually, well, the funny thing about it, Mike, I reached out to him about it because I knew, I had to do a recruiting update when a kid gets an offer from Notre Dame. Even if I didn't have any other recruits to really talk to, which I still did, but even if I didn't, I still would have did a story on it just because it's Notre Dame, you know what I mean? And we're in Indiana, so it has to be written about. But like an hour after I talked to him about getting the Notre Dame offer, he got an offer from Purdue. So I was like, fittingly, this kid gets another offer. So now he's got 3 offers from the 3 Indiana schools. He's got one from Indiana, Purdue, Notre Dame. He's got Arkansas, Ball State, Cincinnati. And he is, just to put some perspective on him, he's the top-rated sophomore in the state, according to 24/7 Sports. And that's for any position. So that lets you know he's a 4-star prospect right now. And again, he's only a sophomore. That's the crazy part about it. We saw JoJo Johnson, blow up his senior year and kind of come on late and get the Notre Dame offer. But the fact that Notre Dame is calling him, reaching out to Drayk right now, and he's got 2 more years left of high school, lets you know, how much, upside they think he has and how much talent they think he has right now. Some other quick things about him: he's number 3. He's the number 3 outside linebacker as a sophomore, in the country for his class. So that's also pretty impressive. And then he's the number 61 overall sophomore nationally in his class. So, that's to be top 100 in your class nationally for football, when there's 11 guys on both sides of the ball at all times, that's pretty impressive. So I'll have more on that, his reaction to it. He's a very humble kid, mild-mannered. But just seeing him play myself, he's very humble, but when he gets on the field, there's a different side that comes out. And I think, Mike, the thing that kind of separates, in my personal, amateur analyst, opinion, I guess, he just moves faster than everyone else. And what's more impressive about him is that he's 215. He's 6'2", 215, moving incredibly fast and incredibly violent on the field. So he's obviously had a really good program in Andrean. I'm sure he's going to continue to grow and improve, but he's a big-time recruit for sure. And then we also got some other ones. I got to give a shout-out, Mike. Actually, Jack Darlington from Crown Point, Mike, listen to our podcast. He's a junior offensive tackle. He's the first kid from Crown Point to get an offer from a Division I program since 2007, according to the Crown Point football Twitter. And he's got an offer, his first division offer from Air Force. So he listens to our podcast. So Jack, shout out to you for listening and all other listeners. Thank you so much. And then the last guy in my recruiting notebook is Kenneth Grant from Maryville, really big defensive lineman, 6'4", 330. He's a junior. He picked up 4 offers this month. Off the top of my head, I think he got one from Toledo, Ball State, and a couple others. So he's a big time player. He's also got offers from Nebraska and Purdue, and I'm sure more will come his way just because you can't teach 6'4", 335 as a defensive tackle. And also he moves, again, all these players, when they earn these Division I scholarships, they move at a different pace or a different speed, or they have just a different level of athleticism. And he has that. He actually played basketball early on in high school, so it lets you know how agile he is to be playing basketball at 6'4", 330. I think those days are over, and I think he has a bright future either way in football. And I'm certainly, wouldn't want to see him on a basketball court either, setting screens or grabbing rebounds. So that's pretty funny. Also, just one little quick thing I'll throw out there because show some love to the football players who are pretty good at basketball. Nikki Fletcher from Andrean, he went over 1,000 points. And he's a standout wide receiver over there. And he's also, again, a pretty good basketball player. He's the 8th player in program history to do it. I'll have that in the notebook this week. And then also, Cooper Jones last Friday hit his first 3-pointer of the year against Crown Point. He's 1 for 2. The shooting stroke looked pretty good, and he was pretty hyped after making it. And it was just funny seeing him do it because in the back of my mind, I'm like, this burly, I guess slightly above average big man is also like Mr. Football, for his position. So it's kind of cool to see him be like a role player on the basketball team, but also have in the back of your mind, remember that, he's probably, one of the best prospects in the state and has the potential to go, to the next level in college and maybe beyond that. So shout out to all the football players who are playing basketball, doing really well. And just keeping me busy, man. You keep getting offers, Mike, so I feel like I have to check in like every 2 weeks almost. So it's been really fun.
Yep, and I want to talk about a little bit about your big enterprise story from last weekend, which is something that's actually been in the works for a while. We've been thinking about it for a while, and I know that there was a lot of legwork, a lot of interviews to get this put together, and it's about how the pandemic has affected officiating. And we saw this like really early on, even in football. It's like we heard these anecdotal stories about older refs opting out because they didn't want to be at risk, basically. And you took kind of a deep dive into this, if you can maybe give us, folks, read the story, because there's a lot there, and there's no way we can cover all of it right here. But, maybe there are a few high points that you wanted to lift out of that for the reader or for the listeners right now. Yeah,
I think the biggest thing I'll say right off the bat is, one, shout out to my editor, Aaron Ferguson, for just pushing me to do the story. Similar to the way you used to push me as my editor and the other editors I've had in the past, all the way back to when I was in college. The great editors will push you out of your comfort zone and assign things for you to do that make you, kind of scared, because I didn't know where to even begin with this story, or how to go about it. And just structurally, I usually don't have to discuss how I'm going to structure a story with my editor, things like that, just because it's not, as big as this one. So we really talked about the structure of it, what points you wanted to hit. And really, the way I can kind of sum it up is that I shared a little of each, referee or official I interviewed, their background, why they got into it, how they got into it, why they opted in or why they opted out, to kind of give that human aspect to it. Also provided some numbers. We've had more officials actually opt out this school year, from last year's school year to this school year, in the last 4 school years combined. And I'll let you know that obviously something, irregular has happened, and that is the pandemic. So I would encourage everyone to read it. Big shout out to Kim Yelich, my favorite Reven official. She's 1A, 1AA, and 1B, I guess, is Michelle DeRosa, who's a softball official. She got on me about, I guess, playing favorites when I shouted out Kim Yelich. But both of them are great. I didn't actually interview Michelle for this story, but she's somebody I'm sure if I ever need to talk to down the line, I will. And I actually might get her perspective just for another story as far as what the spring officials are looking at, as far as their first game in almost 2 years. So overall, though, I think it was a very in-depth piece, one that, like you said, took me a lot of time, a lot of legwork, a lot of phone calls. And basically, Mike, it turned into one person leading me to the next person kind of thing. And all kind of started with Kim Yelich and also Andy Simpson, and those two kind of pointed me in the right direction, gave me a few numbers, people to reach out to, and all these officials were very happy to talk to me. And it was a really just heartfelt type of story. I wanted to really drive home the point that officials are important, and you can't do these games without them ever, and especially in a time like this. So, a lot of them made some tough calls. And for one official I talked to, Dave Kurtz, who's down in the Indy area, who's a colleague of Kim Yelich. He opted out because he's type 2 diabetes. He has type 2 diabetes, so he's at a higher risk, for severe complications if he gets the virus. So he's been doing it for 30 years, and it's the first time in 30 years he's not, officiating, which is, a big part of his life and something that he misses a lot. And he's hoping to get back out there for the next school year. It really just goes into everyone's thought process, the pros, the cons of it. And ultimately how we've gotten to this point now where we can talk about semi-state games and, swimming state championships and things like that. And again, like I said just a few seconds ago, you can't do this without the officials. So my hat's off to them. They didn't have to do this, but they were willing to step up and make this happen for our athletes. And I think that's something that we should definitely be praising them for.
Yes, absolutely. And everybody who... and we said this before, but it bears repeating. Everybody who is making this school year of athletics possible is going above and beyond. The kids are going above and beyond by following protocols. The athletic directors, are going above and beyond by, dealing with constantly changing schedules. The officials, for sure. Sport personnel, scorekeepers, time, clock operators, all sorts of people. It's unfortunate. Well, I guess I was going to say, we're not having now the fans are getting back to the stands. So, I guess the one group of people that, haven't been around this year would be the concession stand operators, because, we haven't been doing really the concession stands for obvious reasons. But almost, everybody else is around and helping. And that is a segue to, as teased earlier in our discussion here, I'm going out tonight.
Back in the saddle.
Yes, as we record this on Wednesday afternoon, I'm going over to TS South in Lansing, which is hosting a boys basketball game. I haven't seen a game since I believe it was March 10th last year. I believe that was the last game I saw. It was Marian Catholic in Bloom in a packed gym at Bloom right before everything happened and before we realized that being in a packed gym with, literally more than 1,000 unmasked people was probably not a great idea. We didn't know it at that time. Luckily, nothing happened as far as I know. It didn't happen with me. It didn't happen with the other participants in that game. But, I'm really excited about it. I actually have football coming up, and 30 days from today, actually, is opening night. That's going to be kind of interesting as well. Illinois football practice was supposed to start 2 days ago when we had the last super blizzard. That was under the original return to play plan. Excuse me. And then that plan was changed. So practice now starts on March 3rd. Games start on March 19th. On the Illinois side, 6-game season, no playoffs as we as of now, there are no playoffs. That was partly because of travel restrictions, and those have actually been loosened. So I don't know. There's a little bit of rumbling that there may be some kind of limited playoffs, maybe not a full-blown state playoff, but we'll see about that. But again, in any case, basketball is back. In basketball, as we know on the Indiana side, we've heard all about, the Hoosiers, legends, and everything like that. But for those of our listeners who may be familiar, Illinois bills itself as the home of the original March Madness. So there's a pretty good prep hoops tradition on the Illinois side of the line as well. And it is cool to be getting back into that again. There are very limited fans. I believe every player is getting 2 tickets, and that will be the limit of the fans. The South Suburban Conference, which TF South and TF North are members of, are allowing no visiting fans. They're allowing only home fans in the gym. And again, a limit of, I believe, 2 tickets per player. So, somewhere between 25 and 30 spectators, which will be it'll be very strange. I mean, it'll be like going to a freshman game, like at 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning or something, So,
yeah. It's also interesting to see like the difference between Munster and like TF South, and they're pretty much the same difference from office.
Yeah. I mean, and I wrote a column about that, a few months back about, it's been pretty much full speed ahead at Munster. They were one of the football teams that played all of their games, as we recall. They did not have a COVID shutdown at all. So definitely props to them for observing the protocols. And I can't recall, were they shut down for basketball maybe briefly?
Yes, at the beginning of the season, but they've been able to play, I believe, nonstop since then. Okay,
so they've handled the protocols pretty well, obviously, then overall. As far as the Illinois side is concerned, I understand that one of the TF South programs, girls bowling, actually had a COVID stoppage. I believe they're back playing again. But that is the nature, that you've reported this, although I notice your reporting has thankfully slacked off a little bit on this because partly because, the girls are done except for Crown Point. So there's fewer teams that are in season right now. And we haven't had as many reports lately of COVID issues, partly because, the numbers are getting better on both sides of the state line. I just saw the other day that I think the positivity rate in Chicago is down to like 2.8%, which is pretty remarkable, really. And things are loosening up. So it's this whole basketball football thing in Illinois is going to be kind of interesting because basically it was like ramping up from 0 to 100 because Governor Pritzker and the Illinois Department of Public Health said, okay, you can play now. And everybody was like, what? We're not quite ready yet. So, and they have to be done by, right around 3 weeks from now, a little bit more than that, basically 3 weeks from the end of this week. So it's a crazy sprint to the finish. Everybody is trying to play as many games as they can. I saw one tweet out today. I think that there's a one website that's keeping track of teams across the state, and there have been a couple of teams that have played 9 games so far, and I know Glenbrook South up in the north suburbs was hoping to schedule 22, assuming that they wouldn't play them all. Just they wanted to have a schedule put together, so if you play, you play. If you don't play, well, then we just move on to the next game. So it's not going to be anything like the usual thing. And again, football is 6 games, but I talked to a kid a couple of weeks ago who said if they give us 3 games or 4 games, we'll take it. The kids just want to play. And you've seen this too. I know, in your discussions, with region athletes in Northwest Indiana, it's like kids want to play. That's the bottom line. Coaches want to coach. It's is kind of a relief and a release in these difficult times for so many people. Athletics is such an important part of the fabric of daily life, and we don't realize it until something disrupts that and gets in the way of it. One thing I did want to mention too, we didn't have this listed down. James and I usually put together a list of topics we're going to talk about, and one thing I did want to mention before we sign off is that Edgar Decker from Gavitt is going to state wrestling this weekend, and what makes that significant is he is the last wrestler alive from the school city of Hammond. He's going to be the last Gavitt wrestler ever to go into a match. He's the only kid out of the four city schools, the four city public high schools who qualified. And this is kind of an ongoing story too. We talked about how Clark and Gavitt girls basketball, obviously their seasons are over, and their history is over. As is Hammond High. Morton is going on. Obviously they'll be playing next year. And the season is coming down to the end for the boys teams, for Clark, Gavitt, Hammond, and Morton. And again, Clark and Gavitt will be done at the end of this season. It's been kind of a rough time, honestly, for those programs to try to persevere through here through this last season. Hammond High is very good though, and they're going to be trying to go out on a high note. Try to bring together a little bit of the history that's been part of that program for so long. It's kind of strange. This is maybe the first podcast we haven't talked about Hammond High hoops, really. So we will definitely be talking more about them.
Update, they're still very good.
Yes.
Number one in the state still.
Yes, exactly. So, and this is, it's going to be a really bittersweet moment. Obviously we've got, Hammond High's expected boys hoops playoff run coming, and we've got a whole spring season as well. And there are a few programs there that are pretty good. Morton baseball in particular is a really solid program, and there's some track kids in the city of Hammond that are pretty good as well. But it's just going to be strange, when Clark and Gavitt close for the last time, and Hammond High, I guess, transitioning as it were, to the new school that's going up right next door. But that's another story we're following, and there are so many stories that we're following. And one thing that we want to tell you for sure, well, actually, we want to tell you several things. Number one, thank you for your support. The folks who are listening, the folks who read our paper every day, the folks who follow us on social media, your support in keeping local journalism going is so important. We couldn't do it without you, for real. And as we say each week, mask up, social distance, and please stay safe. And right now, stay warm as well.
All right, we'll check in with you all next time. And just piggybacking off what Mike says, stay safe, and we'll check in with you all soon.